Now you see, here you see, we'll be discussing the female reproductive phase. So, female reproductive phase or the female reproductive organs, we begin with certain vital organs, the primary ovaries, a pair of ovaries, a pair of oviduct, the uterus, the cervix, the vagina, and 6 is external genitalia and 7 is the mammary gland. So these are a very important or primary female sex organs. Okay, so that I am dealing with a pair of ovaries, a pair of oviduct, the uterus, the cervix, the vagina, external genitalia and mammary gland. Now here you see primary. What is ovary? This is the primary female sex organ, and that produces the female gamete, that is known as the ovum, and it is divided into two zones. The ovum is actually divided into two zones. One is the peripheral cortex and inner medulla. Now this peripheral cortex is the outer lining and the inner medulla gives rise to the Graafian follicle, and they produce the hormones also. The Graafian follicle, one is a progesterone, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These are the two hormones produced. And the accessory ducts. What is duct? Ducts and tubules, that is known as oviducts or the fallopian tubule, and the uterus and the vagina. Okay, so these are the basically different things. Now you see, this is a rough diagram of the uterus, or that is the primary female sex organ, the transverse section. Here you have the fallopian tube, it is the uterus chamber, these are the ovary that produces undergo gametogenesis to produce the ova or the egg, and here it is the cervix yani mouth of the uterus. This is the cervical tube, and this is known as the vagina, that is external genitalia. Now you see here the function is like that, and basically you see this fallopian tube and the ovary has no connection to it. Okay, now it is also divided into three parts. This is the fimbricated end, that of the fallopian tube. Okay, now that is also known as the fundibulum. This is known as the isthmus, means connection, and here is the ampulla. So this, now when the ova is released from the matured Graafian follicle, it is just sucked up by the ends of the ovary. Okay, ends of the fallopian tube. So this structure is very, very important, and we are going through it. Okay, now here if you can see this diagram, this is a more clearer view of the diagram, and I'll be it is in your book also. Now if you see, this is actually the fallopian tube, this is the cavity, and this entirely is, you call it, the functional unit of the female reproductive system. So here you can see this ovary. I have already shown you the ovary. Now this ovary is actually the site that undergo now see, this ovary is actually the site that undergo gametogenesis to produce the ova, and this structure is a rough one, but this is basically the primary, that plays a primary function for the development of the embryo. Okay, because since this is the bigger gamete, this is generally sessile, that means non-movable, and this area gives the cushion or the place for the fixing of the embryo that forms the placenta. I would be doing it in the later parts of my chapter, but this structure of this is the primary functional unit, I said, and here This is actually the place where the embryo gets attached, and then that provides nourishment to the growing embryo, and that embryo later on develops into the fetus and later on in a different individual. Okay, so watch this properly. I'll be sending you the diagrams also. If you don't have a book, go through it properly, revise it properly, and then we'll go do the detail in my next class.